Hi, Rob here, and welcome to Module 1, What Makes Us Fat, Part 1. So here's what the experts tell us. As I pointed out in the introductory video on our website, the majority of experts believe that we get fat because we overeat, and the only way to get thin is to undereat. These same experts seem satisfied with the theory that obesity is caused by gluttony and a lack of willpower. This theory only serves to make those of us who are obese feel guilty for this apparent lack of will. The good news is that there is a ton of research, some new and some old yet neglected, that the real reason we get fat is not because of how much we eat. It has to do with how fat is regulated in the body. When we get fat, something has gone wrong with our body's ability to regulate fat. It will be shown that we overeat because we are getting fat, not the other way around. So here's where we need to get a bit technical. Don't worry though, just hang in there and it'll all make sense in the end. When we consume carbohydrates, no matter the source, refined sugars, wheat, rice, or potatoes, the body digests these and then converts them to glucose. When glucose hits the bloodstream after digestion, the pancreas pumps out insulin in order that the cells can open up and metabolize the glucose. The insulin facilitates the glucose to be absorbed into the muscle and liver cells, storing it as glycogen for use later as fuel. Some of the glucose is converted directly to fatty acids inside the liver. Now here's the important point. The fat cells convert the glucose to fatty acids. If the fat cell is full, new fat cells will be created. Most of the fatty acids are converted to triglycerides inside the fat cells. Triglycerides consist of 3 fatty acid molecules bound to one glycerol molecule, the glycerol coming from the glucose. Triglycerides, because of their large size, cannot penetrate the membrane of the fat cells and are therefore trapped inside them. The only way the triglycerides can leave the fat cell is if they are broken up into their constituent fatty acids. But high insulin levels inhibit the breakdown of the triglycerides, which again causes them to be trapped in the fat cells. Here's the thing, even a slight elevation of insulin can have this same effect, trapping the triglycerides in the fat cells. In addition, the elevated insulin levels cause the protein cells to be trapped in the muscle cells. Only when insulin levels are very low, after the meal is completely digested, are the triglycerides allowed to be broken up, thereby releasing the fatty acids to enter the bloodstream to be used as fuel when needed. So here's the bottom line on how we get fat. Sustained high insulin levels means that the only fuel available to burn is the glucose circulating in the bloodstream. The fat is trapped in the fat cells, and the protein is trapped in the muscle cells. We also cannot use the carbs in the form of glycogen that are stored away in the muscle and liver cells. These are also locked away. So when this glucose circulating the bloodstream is all used up, the cells are literally starved and our body craves the only thing that can provide us with immediate energy, glucose in the form of more sugars and carbohydrates. We get hungrier faster than we would otherwise, and we tend to eat more than we would otherwise, more carbohydrates and sugars. As we eat more to try to get the fuel our cells need to function, our fat cells just get fatter. More and more glucose is shunted to the fat cells and converted to fatty acids, and then bound up into triglycerides. The triglycerides are stuck in the fat cells. The only fuel we have is the glucose in the bloodstream. Our cells just crave more and more sugar. As we're putting on fat, we also get bigger, so our need for fuel increases even more. As we fatten, our energy demands increase, and consequently our appetites as well, to support the extra weight, particularly our appetite for carbs, as this is the only nutrient our cells will burn for fuel when insulin is constantly elevated. A vicious cycle develops, making us fatter and fatter, one that is hard to break. So what to do? The only way to get off this vicious merry-go-round is to cut back significantly on our sugar and carbohydrate consumption. Cutting back on the carbs and sugar allow our insulin levels to return to normal, going up while eating and during digestion, but going to zero, practically, not long after the meal, up until the next meal, as well as at night while we sleep. This allows the fatty acids to finally be released from the fat cells to be burned for fuel. This also stops the craving for sugars and carbs. All we need to do then is fill the void with practically any other kind of food, including, as we'll talk about in chapters 4 through 6, copious amounts of good fats. I'll make it clear which are the good fats and which are the bad fats. Now, it's true that any fat you consume is immediately shunted directly to the fat cells and stored as fat. But remember, as long as your insulin production is completely turned off between meals and at night, the fat will be released from the fat cells to be used up as fuel. You will not gain any weight by eating fat, good fats that is. Now, I'll also introduce all the amazing foods you want to include in your diet in Module 8. As long as you keep your sugar and carbohydrate consumption to a minimum, you can practically eat all you want of these foods.